You already decided. Your brain is just writing the explanation now. Not metaphorically, not as a provocation, as a description of what is happening inside you at this precise moment, in the soft machinery behind the words you call your thoughts. The decision came first, the reason came second. And the remarkable thing, the thing that should unsettle you just slightly, is that the sequence felt like the opposite. It always does. This is not a flaw in the system. It is the system. The human brain is, at its deepest operational level, a coherence machine. It cannot tolerate the experience of randomness in its own behavior. It cannot present to the conscious self the raw, unnarrated truth of how a choice actually emerges. Through impulse, through social current, through some ancient pressure that has no name in the vocabulary of the self. So it does what any good editor does. It takes the footage after it's been shot, and it assembles a story that feels original, that feels authored, that feels like you. This process has a name in behavioral science, post-hoc rationalization. But the name is almost too tidy. It suggests a discrete event, a single moment of intellectual dishonesty. What it actually describes is something far more continuous, far more architectural. It is not that you occasionally construct reasons after the fact. It is that the construction of reasons after the fact is the primary mode through which the human organism experiences itself as a rational agent. The explanation is not a supplement to the decision. The explanation is the only version of the decision the conscious mind ever actually receives. In the early 1980s, a neuroscientist named Benjamin Libet placed electrodes on the scalps of ordinary people and asked them to do something simple: flex their wrist whenever they felt like it, and note the precise moment they became aware of the intention to move. What he found disturbed people in ways they are still finding language for. The brain began preparing the movement, a measurable surge of neural activity called the readiness potential, approximately 500 milliseconds before the person reported any conscious intention to act. The decision was already in motion. The self arrived to claim it 300 milliseconds later, like someone who shows up to a party and insists they planned it. The conscious mind did not initiate, it inherited. And yet the person flexing their wrist believed entirely in that moment that they had decided. The ownership felt real, the authorship felt genuine. Because by the time the conscious narrative assembled itself around the action, there was nothing in the experience to suggest it had not always been in charge. This is where the mechanism becomes something worth sitting with. Several decades later, a series of experiments conducted by Petter Johansson and Lars Hall produced results that were, by any honest measure, extraordinary. Participants were shown pairs of photographs and asked to choose the more attractive face. Through a sleight of hand the experimenters had quietly perfected, the photograph the person had not chosen was slipped back to them as the one they had selected. And then they were asked to explain why they had picked it. They explained. In detail. With conviction. They described specific qualities. The warmth of the eyes, a certain quality of the smile. In a face they had, moments before, passed over entirely. They were not lying. They were not confused. They were doing the thing the brain always does, generating a coherent account of a choice, even when the choice itself was fabricated. The mechanism does not require accuracy. It requires coherence. It requires a story that holds together long enough to satisfy the self's need to feel continuous and deliberate. Neuropsychologists who study patients with certain kinds of brain damage encounter an even starker version of this process, which they call confabulation. A patient with a disruption in memory or self-monitoring will produce explanations for their behavior, sincere, detailed, narratively complete explanations that have no correspondence to reality. Not because they are deceiving anyone, because the brain, denied access to the actual cause, simply generates a plausible one. The generation of plausible explanations is automatic. It does not wait for accuracy, it waits for nothing. In people without brain damage, the mechanism is more subtle, but it is the same mechanism. Now consider the social dimension, because the brain does not only rationalize for itself, it rationalizes for an audience. The story you construct about your choices must not only feel true to you, it must be presentable to others. It must make you appear consistent. It must make you appear deliberate. It must protect the image of a self that knows what it wants and chooses accordingly. The ego in this reading is not the author of your decisions. It is the press secretary. Its job is not to reveal, but to explain, not to initiate, but to justify. And it is extraordinarily good at this job. So good that you almost never catch it working. Now think about a specific moment, not an abstract one, a real one. You left a relationship, or you stayed. You took the job, or you walked away from it. You made the purchase before you had finished deciding whether to make it. And afterward, within seconds, or minutes, or hours, you found yourself in possession of a reason. A clean, sensible, personally meaningful reason that accounted for what you did. It felt like the reason had been there all along, waiting for you to articulate it. It felt like the decision was downstream from the reasoning. It wasn't. What actually happened was this. Something moved in you, a pull, an aversion, a pressure you cannot fully trace, and the motion began before you named it. And then the naming arrived, and it was so fluent, so natural, so completely formatted as an act of deliberate thought that there was no seam visible, no gap between the impulse and the explanation, no silence where the actual cause had been. You filed it under, a decision I made for these reasons. The reasons felt like yours because you generated them. But generation is not the same as causation. The author of a story is not the same as the event the story describes. This is what it means to be a narrative animal. Not that you tell stories about the world, that is ordinary and unremarkable, but that you tell stories about yourself, in real time, about choices already concluded, and you experience those stories as the ground truth of your own inner life. The story and the self become indistinguishable. The explanation becomes the memory, and the memory becomes the evidence for the next explanation. The loop closes. It always closes. You are not being deceived by something external. You are being maintained by something internal. The architecture is doing what architecture does, holding the structure upright, making the rooms livable, filling the silence with something that sounds like intention. The question is not whether you rationalize. You do. Everyone in possession of a human nervous system does, continuously, without interruption, from the first social performance of early childhood until the final coherent thought before sleep. The question is a narrower one. Can you hold both things at once? The story you tell and the silence before it? Can you remain in contact with the fact that something moved first and the words came after? Not to stop the process. You cannot stop it. But to know that the corridor was there before you decided to walk down it. The door is already closed. You are still deciding whether to open it.